Okay, these are two problems from section 1.5, and we're going to do another one in a second. I just picked a couple of them to go over, and we can do more questions on them when we have class again. Whenever you're doing a limit, you want to first try to simply substitute the value you're approaching into your function. So as long as I'm not putting 2 in, which would make my denominator go to 0, I should be okay here by plugging -2 into the function. I come up with -5/4. So by direct substitution, as long as you don't get 0/0, you can get your limits just by plugging the -2 in for x. If you tried that in 44, though, you plug 2 in, your numerator, 2 minus 2, would head to 0. And your denominator, 4 minus 4, would head to 0. And as we talked about in class, whenever your numerator and your denominator go to 0, you can't determine what the limit is without doing a little bit of algebra. And the algebra that you want to do here is you want to factor. If you factor the bottom into x minus 2 and x plus 2, then you notice that you can divide 2 minus x and x minus 2 because they are exact opposites. And so you will end up with 1/x plus 2 with a negative, because when you divide these out, you create a negative. And you can put the negative in the denominator out front or up top, it doesn't matter, but you just don't want to forget about it. So when you do that, at this point, again, you're going to try to substitute 2 in and see if you still have an issue. Obviously you don't, because when you divided these two factors out, they were what was causing the numerator and denominator to go to 0. So now when I plug in, I get -1/4 for my limit. The third one that I want to do is number 58. So for number 58, it's a little more complicated limit. We're going to do a limit as delta x approaches 0. And we're starting off with the square root of x plus delta x minus the square root of x all over delta x. If you try direct substitution, which should always be your first inclination, when you plug 0 in, the numerator becomes square root of x minus square root of x, which goes to 0. And your denominator, if you plug 0 in, also goes to 0. So once again, whenever that's the case, you need to do a little bit of algebra to simplify. And the algebra in this case is what we did at the very end of class today. We use the conjugate. So the conjugate of the numerator is the square root of x plus delta x plus the square root of x. And we're going to use that as a number 1. We're going to put the conjugate over itself and multiply so that we're not changing the value of this function. We're just going to change the way it looks. And so how it'll end up is the denominator is just going to be this product, and I'm not going to try to distribute or simplify. I'm just going to leave it alone. But the numerator is going to be the square root of x plus delta x times itself, which gives me x plus delta x. And the outer and the inner term in my FOIL will go to 0. And my last term will be negative square root of x times positive square root of x, which is -x. That means that the numerator simplifies all the way to delta x, because x minus x is 0. And that delta x and the denominator's delta x will be able to divide out. And so I will be left with 1/, this square root. At this point, now that I've divided out the issue that makes the numerator and denominator go to 0, Now I can plug in 0 for delta x and get 1 over the square root of x plus the square root of x, which is 1 over 2 square root of x, and that is the limit.